I want to remind you of something that I partially hope you're getting tired of, but I'm doing it on purpose. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And in the midst of that, it tells us through that creation story that God created mankind. If you're going, seriously, we got to hear this again? Yes, you do, and for 4 more weeks after this. 2 reasons. Number 1, we don't think about it all the time if we don't keep saying it. But second of all, I want us to really understand this. God created mankind in His own image. In the image of God, He created them. Male and female, He created them. God saw all that He had made, and it was very good. Do we not have the slides? Did they not come in? Anyway, there it is. I want us to not just hear it. My wife, who was a teacher and everything else, says you got to see it and hear it, and I should make you read it. You're supposed to do that too, and all the different ways to get you involved. But I want us to see this. I was watching a show the other day, and it's an old rerun show comedy that was on, and one of the characters on there is a paleontologist, I think, and strongly believes in evolution. And it was funny because one of the other characters was on there, was giving him a hard time, going, just playing dumb, saying evolution's stupid, and going on this whole thing. It was funny watching the back and forth between the two of them. He couldn't believe how stupid she was and not believing science and all this kind of stuff, and he was giving her a hard time, and they were back and forth. And it was a funny discourse, but the thing that kind of scared me in the end, and I'll just say it, was that they were promoting not this when it was done. And we may not totally believe in evolution. Maybe we do. I don't know. But I'll tell you what Scripture says was that God created mankind and created him in His image, and it was very good. According to the psalmist, we've been looking at this too. You created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, and I know that full well. I really, really want us to get this. 1, for ourselves. 2, to understand this is true about everybody else as well. I talked about that Bible app in the verse of the day. And the other day, there was one that was on there, and in the midst of considering this, the verse that came on, it said, love your enemies, do good to them, lend to them without expecting to get anything back. A lot of you just shut off when I said love your enemies, huh? Love your enemies, do good to them, lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because He is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. And I read that, and that last line for some reason got me, because He is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. And again, this can be a whole nother message, so I'm going to be careful not to go there. But we have such an Old Testament view of God, we think, no, He destroys the ungrateful and the wicked. No. When Jesus came, what He started to teach is actually God is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. So He says, love your enemies. And you know why I think, as I was reflecting on this, why I think He's kind? Because they're made in the image of God. You know how hard that is to wrap our head around that politician we hate right now, that we talk bad about, that we post about on Facebook, that we have negative nicknames for? That person's made in the image of God, no matter where we're at on it. That family member that drives us crazy, that we sit around a dinner table with and can feel our skin crawl at times when here we go again and we're on that, person is made in the image of God. It didn't say God created some of mankind and the rest came from monkeys. It said God created mankind. In the image of God, He created them. And the psalmist says, it's good because His works are wonderful. That coworker that we struggle with is made in the image of God. this got me because I was thinking that's why he's able to be kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. And that's why Peter says later that God is patient because he doesn't want anybody to perish because that person was made in the image of God with abilities to reflect him. The problem is they don't see it. They don't realize if someone's acting in such a way that is not how God created them, not reflecting God, not reflecting these characteristics, it's because they struggle with the same things we do. They have core weaknesses, they have core fears, they have core desires, and they don't know the truth necessarily. Or they may not understand, or there might be something because there's an enemy that's constantly not saying, he's constantly going around trying to take away who we can be in the image of God by speaking lies, and they're listening to this. And so are you, as well as your enemy. They're dealing with the same thing. So that verse of the day just nailed me this last week, going, oh my goodness. Because it's so easy with these people that we just think are making such stupid decisions, are so bad, are so corrupt, or doing all this kind of stuff. And Jesus says, love them. Because then you'll be a child of the Most High, because he is kind. Doesn't that drive you crazy that your God is kind to these guys? To the ungrateful and the wicked? I didn't make that up. That's Scripture. Because they're made in the image of God. I got to see her this week at camp, but the woman, Lavon Peinstein, these girls got to meet her at camp, who's been helping coach me through this. I've shared this with you before, and I want you to hear it again. Each of us are exactly who God created us to be. We are created as his image bearers, but we are finite and can only reflect a part of his character. God placed in each of us a portion of his character, so together as people, we could reflect the whole of his character. And in reflecting the whole, then we become salt, and we become light, and we don't have to walk around just griping and complaining and moaning. We can make a difference, even if it's for 1 or 2 or 3. When we realize that in the image of God, we were created, and we have something in us to reflect him. I had a whole bunch, and everything this morning has kind of changed. I'll come back to it another time. But we're going through this series of understanding the different ways that we are created using an old tool called the Enneagram. It's a personality tool. There's all kinds of them out there to help maybe guide us and help us see that maybe this is who I am. Maybe these are the characteristics I have that can reflect God. Or we may be going, you know what, that sounds like so-and-so, and that so-and-so drives me crazy, but now maybe I understand why they're actually driving me crazy, because they actually have this ability, but they're struggling with this. And ultimately, the hope is to help us understand why we do the things we do, but also help us understand why others do the things they do, so that we can actually love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves, which again are the words of Jesus when he says, that's all I really want. That is the greatest commandment. But, and I read this the other day, it was on a book on leadership. It said, in leadership, a person is constantly dealing with problems, and most of them are personality problems. We don't do this we do this because that's the issue, but it won't do us any good if we don't do something with it. So I want to show you something that I have here. I've been carrying this with me for a few weeks. Can anybody see what's in there? It's in my wallet. Does anybody see what's in there? No? There's a rock in there. Actually, it's a piece of sand. Can you see it? Can you see it? Can you see it yet? You can't see it. Give me a break. You're as blind as can be. Wow, she really did see it. There's a little pebble in here, a piece of sand. This piece of sand accompanied me one day on a Sunday morning about a month ago while I was walking the dog before service. I was out walking around, and you know, sometimes when you're walking, you just get that uncomfortable feeling in your foot, in your shoe, and I just kept walking on it. I was like, I would shake my shoe a little bit, I would keep going, and I just kept walking, and then I would keep going, and I would just keep walking. And because one, I'm trying to keep a heart rate up when you're trying to get your goal on your move and everything else. You don't want to stop, take time to take your shoe off because that's too much work, and it messes up the plan that we have going, and it messes up the strategy we have going, and you just keep going and keep going and keep going, and then finally, Bumper had to pee, so that gave me an excuse. I stopped, and I reached down, and I finally took off my shoe, and I looked in there, and I'm like, where in the world is this thing that's been causing all this pain? And this was it. This tiny little thing was ruining my walk, was making it a pain, was making it more difficult than what it ought to be, and not really able to walk the way that I would want to walk. In fact, probably if people were looking out their window that morning, they were wondering if I was starting to seize out when I just keep kind of, shake my foot a little bit along the walk on there. And it just struck me how such little things that we won't just stop and deal with and take care of can so mess up our walk for the day. And so I actually kept this special piece of sand and put it in my wallet to remind me of the importance of needing to stop on these things that cause us, in the words of Paul, to do what we don't understand, to lead us to do things we don't want to do or not do things that we want to do. And I put this in my wallet. I carry it with me because an author by the name of Levi Lesko, a pastor, says, information without application actually leads to self-deception. If all we do is sit around and hear what's going on, but don't actually ever stop to take the shoe off, to take the pebble out that's in there, all we're doing is deceiving ourselves. James said it another way. We're going and we're looking in a mirror and we're looking at ourselves, and then we're walking away and we're forgetting what we look like. And it does no good. And so I want to encourage us as we continue to look at this to stop and look at ourselves, because it will lead to a more enjoyable, to a more freeing, to a more relaxing, to a more healthy walk as we go through each day. And I'll tell you, since then, I've taken other walks and I've had other rocks in my shoes. Now it's a lot easier for me to stop and just take the thing out, throw it out, and be done with it, because they're never going to end. They're going to keep coming. The enemy does not give up coming after us. Every day he's going to try. The difference is we start to understand some things to go, no, I'm going to stop a little quicker, I'm going to get it out, we're going to move on. And we're going to live in the freedom that he says he has for us. If we go, man, I don't want to do this, I hate taking the time to work on it, that sounds too hard, let me just give you a little bit of advice from a habits guru named James Clear. He wrote a book called Atomic Habits. Honestly, it's not a Christian book, but I would encourage everybody to read it. It's a great book on just developing little habits at a time. But he sends out a weekly email, and he says, I can't tell you how many times I don't feel like training, and I tell myself, I'll just do one set, and I'll see how I feel. You would think it would stop working at some point, but I almost always end up doing the whole workout. So he said, just start and do a little and see what happens. That's what I want us to do with this, is to take this little bit and just start, even though we might be going, that sounds annoying, to stop and take off my shoe and get that out there because I'm on a mission, whatever that may be, because this will free us up. So those of you that we've talked to already who might be the principled reformer, stop. Work through that. The helpful nurturer, stop. Work through that. The admirable achiever, stop. Take a look. Work through that. Or last week, we had the individualist, the one that's also called the romantic, the one that a lot of the world looks at and thinks, man, they're a little weird, because they might show up to school riding a bicycle with a helmet on and darts stuck to the head with a briefcase, Samsonite briefcase bungee to the back of them, or wearing their dad's Air Force clothes with goggles. These are all personalities that we're created with that will reflect God, that have the opportunity to, but can also go down dark paths when we're misaligned or out of alignment with Him. Today I want to talk to one known as the Analytical Investigator. As I do, I just want to share with you about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, I was mowing the lawn, and I was kept getting this call. I was kind of getting towards the end of it. It was actually starting to look like it was going to storm a little bit, or just kind of getting darker. It was getting later at night. I was getting close to the end, and I started getting a call from an unknown number over and over and over again. And I'm just going to be honest with you. If it's an unknown number, I've got to the point where I push in because I know they are so gracious about my car warranty, but after 2 years, it's run out, okay? They can call me in many times as they want, but it seems like every time I do that now, it's the car warranty thing, and it just drives me crazy. So I don't even answer it. But it was I can't remember if it was a California or a Colorado number now. Can't remember which one it was. Kept popping up 3 times it came on. And then as I'm getting close to the end, I didn't see it, but our secretary of one of our churches texted and said, hey, heads up, you're going to get a call from so-and-so coming from Colorado, traveling to yada yada. Wife just had a hysterectomy, some other surgery being done, everything taken, or actually not wife, just girl with them, and basically they need help. They ran out of gas. They're stranded on the side of the road. So you would think I felt bad for not answering the phone, but I still didn't. I was just like, seriously? Who in the world takes a trip after that and runs out of gas on the side of the road? So I made the phone call back. And I call him, and the reason I get the phone calls is because now that Randy Gibbs is retired, I got the pleasure of being the president of the ministerial, even though I said no. They said, you're it. So that's how it works in our ministerial. And so I get those phone calls now. And so I called back, and I talked to him and gave me the whole thing again on what had happened. And all he thought was, we're somewhere near this place called Quinter or something like that. And we're kind of out there. We're on the side of the road. We ran out of gas. We were trying to get to Hayes where I could get some money that was wired, and it really didn't make a whole lot of sense. I said, well, I'll tell you what. I live in Waukene. I'm actually 20 miles away. Someone from there might be able to help you. Let me call. And we went through the whole process. I called our police station here. I told them what was going on. And they said, hey, tell them to call 911. That way we can pinpoint exactly where they are. We can know which county to send to them. We can do all this kind of stuff. So I called back, and the girl answered the phone this time. I went through the whole thing. Hey, if you call 911, here's what's going to happen. I could hear the guy in the background going, I ain't calling 911. Well, been through it enough. I'm like, well, sorry, dude. And then all the compassion was gone from me at that point. But I'm not going to do it, whatever. So she goes, thanks for your help, hung up the phone. I couldn't really get over it. My compassion was gone, but I'm still going, regardless of how I feel, they're stranded out there. So we went through a whole long process or whatever. I don't know how it all worked out. I don't want to get into all the details, but eventually their own child called our police station, and they sent somebody out there. I'm like, okay, I'm confused now what's going on, but they got him taken care of. This guy got to where he eventually wanted to go, sent me a text, said, we made it home. God bless. Thanks for all your help. Whatever. I don't feel like I did a lot, but hey, I answered that. But as we went through that process, what went through my mind a few times, as I just shared with you, was how in the world do you start a trip like that and run out of gas? Some of you are here going, how in the world do you start a trip like that and run out of gas? You would be going, man, I would have had the trip planned ahead of time and knew where gas stations were and knew exactly how many miles it took to get there and would know when my tank would reach a quarter of a tank and I would only have this many more miles on it. You would have that all figured out. But you would also have an ability to work through that situation with them objectively and just, be able to just work through without a whole lot of emotion and get them the help they need. If that's you, then you are probably who we're talking about today as the analytical advisor. You are a person whom God has placed within you the ability to reflect His image of wisdom and truth. And a lot of this comes because of your analytical, objective, perceptive, still sensitive, and curious bent toward life. You can walk into a situation and just be able to bring up something that not everybody else is seeing or thinking about because you walk through life with great vision and great perspective. And when you're living in alignment with God, you're living as His beloved, you know that you have a hope. You have a gift of generating just tremendous insights and understanding that can even lead to some of our best innovation whether it be just a simple situation like helping someone deal with running out of gas on the side of the road, or creating something new to send to space or whatever. You have that ability because of the nature. You have an uncanny ability to observe and understand new things that most people cannot and do not notice. When it comes to relationships, you're a personality that brings some amazing benefits to a relationship. You bring some amazing heartaches, and we're going to get into that second. But you bring into a relationship some amazing benefits as well, because you're not emotionally needy. You don't have impossible expectations of people that you love. And you can typically stay calm when people around you are falling apart. In fact, when you're deeply connected with yourself and with others, you have an ability to use your knowledge and your insight to help others in those relationships and to truly care for them. And when you're in their world and not just in your own head, you can bring advice, you can bring thoughts, you can bring direction to a relationship that is very real and truthful and needed, even if the other person didn't want to hear it and might even get upset at you because you just see the truth. You're able to pull back, just go through every angle, every bend, everything, and look at it and go, here's where it is. Here's the answer, and objectively just share that with them. Again, we'll get into why, but you may not have a wide net of friends, but those that you do, it's extremely loyal. And they know that they can count on you, and they know that they can come to you, and they know that they can talk to you, and they know they can share their deepest, darkest secrets with you, kind of like a priest at confessional, because you know that you can't go around and share that with other people. Part of it's because you know if the shoe was on the other foot, you wouldn't want that going the other way. There are some sitting in here, in this building today, in this sanctuary, where this is you. In the professional world, you are the one that we need around the table. Even if it's on a church board or a leadership team, you're the one we need. So when emotional moments come up, for instance, when someone calls and has run out of gas because they made a dumb decision, everybody else is sitting around going, well, they're just stupid. Let them deal with it. You're going, no, it wasn't a good idea, but let's just figure out who do we call, what do we do, how do we go about it? And you check into all this, and you're able to make just an objective decision. You're needed. When the workplace is going through a stressful time and things are difficult and everybody's just kind of tired and they're worn out, you're the one that can walk in and go, here's what we need to do. A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. Let's get this done. Analytical, investigating, running it through the mind, going, here we go. These are the blessings that you bring to the world as you reflect an image of God that just brings wisdom and brings truth to each and every situation. It doesn't even have to be a spiritual one, but hey, even talking spiritually, in your spiritual walk, there's an amazing benefit to having this personality and to this type, because you're not going to cling on to your ego with such a tight grip. You have a love for solitude, so you're kind of more by just kind of naturalist, and you're attracted to simplicity and fewer attachments, and to just, hey, if that's the right thing, then I'm going to go with that. If it's not, I'm going to go with that. So if something comes across that you just determine that's not right, your ego is not going to get in the way of you going, no, I got to hang on to this, because what's true is true. What's black is black, and what's white is white. And we're just going to look at this objectively. Some of you are sitting here, and you're a blessing as that investigative, analytical investigator. However, the enemy comes after you too. And maybe you're sitting here going, hey, that is kind of me. That's kind of who I am. He's describing me. That's how I operate. And sometimes people actually get irritated from it so it's good to hear that it's good. But I also find myself struggling and putting myself in situations where people are just struggling to be around me because of this. That's because when we're living in an unhealthy part of ourselves, when we're misaligned, when we're out of alignment with God, it's real easy to fall into the world with our Achilles heel. When we're out of the garden of grace and we're in the Genesis 3 world, it's real easy to fall in the world of becoming angry, and arrogant, and stingy, and stubborn, and distant, and critical of others, unassertive, and even cynical. And it comes because there's a core fear that you deal with on a regular basis of just being annihilated or invaded and not existing, of being thought, similar to a 3, of being incompetent or ignorant or not smart enough for the situation, or even of having too many obligations put on you and too many expectations, and it's just going to wear out your battery. And you aren't going to be able to keep going, and you're just not going to be able to do, the brain's not going to work, everything's not going to happen. You live with this fear. And when we give in to that, we can find ourselves, like I said, becoming distant, shutting ourselves off to the world. And man, we would just live in a fantasy world, in the desire of going to a small room with a whole bunch of books and just getting caught up in that and not being relational with people. I was listening to a podcast just this week on someone with this particular type. And he was talking about, I don't remember the company that he was running, but he said that he asked one time if they could put one of those Home Depot sheds behind the building where everybody else is working, just one of those small sheds, so that he could just go out there by himself sometime with all of his books and stuff and just go be by himself and work on it. And he says, code wouldn't let them do it. And he goes, but it took me a long time to realize that wasn't normal to feel that way. In his mind, he didn't want to be around the people. He wanted to be all by himself, just amongst the pile of books, studying, learning, taking in, gathering, processing, going through this stuff. And everybody else thought he just didn't like him, didn't want to be around him. If you're married to someone like this, you've seen the struggle with this because they just want to go off and be by themselves for a while, and you start to go, are they mad at me? Do they not love me? Is there something wrong with me? And it can hurt a relationship when what's really happening is they're going, my battery is on low. And if I don't go plug this in, then I'm not going to make it. I'm going to be depleted, and I'm going to be worthless, and I'm going to be incompetent, and it's just going to annihilate me. Maybe that's one way to explain. A lot of us, I don't know how many of you charge your batteries at night on your phones when you go to bed? Through the night. I do. I have a brother and a sister-in-law who do not, and it drives me crazy. We give them a hard time. But we're all on this 360, Life 360 thing, and it's almost a running joke now that first thing in the morning or late at night, it'll pop up, so-and-so, well, I'm just going to say it, it's Jordan and Jesse. I don't care if they're mad. Jordan or Jesse has 9% battery life left. Tell them to plug in their phone. So it's kind of become a joke. Plug in your phone, and we'll text them. But they don't. We really don't know why. When you ask Jordan, why won't you plug in your phone? I don't want to. Just kind of his answer. But they'll wake up, their phones will wake up in the morning with 9%. That's how a lot of times this person, this analytical investigator, wakes up feeling like, I've only got 25% battery to start the day with, while everybody else is starting with 100. And they start the day really creating strong boundaries, already thinking of when am I going to get a break? When am I going to be able to pull away? When am I going to be able to do that? Because they're just afraid that they don't have as much battery life and it's just going to croak if they don't. While everybody else is running around. They're afraid they're just not going to have enough. And eventually what they do is they give in to the main weakness of an old sin of avarice. Anybody know the definition of that word? What avarice is? By definition, it's acquiring and accumulating material and financial wealth to the point of where it's just unhealthy. Webster actually says excessive or insatiable desire for wealth or gain. They start to accumulate, but they also hold on. This isn't quite that they're just going after money and stuff, but they give in to this thing of avarice in that they hang on to everything they've got. Every moment they've got, every moment of the day is precious to them. Every little opportunity is precious, and they won't give it up. They won't share it. It's mine. And at the same time, they accumulate more knowledge, more understanding. I got to learn more. I got to understand this more. They can probably tell you facts about things that you're going, I didn't even know that that existed, but especially what's the point of knowing that? Because they just are accumulating, they're grabbing, they're hanging on to, or they're building up while they're also just hanging on to what they have. And they're living with a mindset of scarcity instead of realizing that even though their battery feels low, God is here to take care of them. They don't have to constantly accumulate. You don't have to constantly hang on. You actually have a gospel of abundance. And what happens is when they get into this place where they're really out of alignment and they're going down this path, and they're just grabbing, hanging on, all it does is build the fear that they have and just continues to take them down the hole where it's more, hang on, get away. And then the rest of us don't get to experience the light and the salt that you reflect in the image that was put on you of wisdom and truth. So today, as we close up, I want to read to you something as we've done everything, because the only answer to this is the gospel. I want to read to you something that I want to encourage you to apply if you're in this category today, or to be able to share with someone. And it's in Matthew chapter 25. Would you open to that? In Matthew chapter 25, I want you to hear this, because this is a gospel of good news for someone who's struggling with this. Now, I will tell you right now, we don't always read it this way. The truth is, this is something that we've actually almost made negative and scary and threatening and everything else, because, again, we like to focus on the very, 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 very end and not what's being shared in the rest of this illustration that's given by Jesus in this parable. Matthew chapter 25, starting in verse 14. He's talking about the kingdom of heaven, and he says, it will be like a man in the end times with the kingdom of heaven, when that day comes. It will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. Right now, if you're that analytical investigator, I want to tell you, you have been entrusted with wealth from God. God tells us that. You've been entrusted with that. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag, he went off, he dug a hole in the ground, and he hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. And the man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5 and said, Master, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I've gained 5 more. His master replied, Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I've gained 2 more. His master replied, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you're a hard man, harvesting where you've not sown and gathering where you've not scattered seed. So I was afraid, and I went out and I hid your gold in the ground. See, here's what belongs to you. To this his master replied, You wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed? Well, then you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. And then that hard response, take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have in abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. Now again, it is so easy, and I'd skip that last verse on purpose because we just want to read that and hear that. Guess what? That's that first type that we talked about that just wants to say, wait, this is what's right. Because what I want us to hear in the midst of this is Jesus sharing good news that we've been given wealth. And not only that we've been given wealth, we've been given an opportunity to utilize that wealth. And then not only do we get the opportunity to utilize that wealth, we get the opportunity to utilize that wealth and receive more in abundance when we do, not run out. The truth is, our battery does not run out when we use what God has given us. It actually grows and becomes stronger and becomes more powerful and it becomes more useful. Paul found this out when he wrote this words where he says, in everything I did, I showed you, but by this kind of hard work, we must help the weak, remembering the words the Lord Jesus himself said, which we don't find anywhere in the Gospels, but apparently he said where Paul was able to record it, it is more blessed to give than to receive. What I just read to you is part of the gospel of truth. That we don't have to live in a scarcity mindset that says, I've got to hang on to what I have and grab my own or else I'm going to run out. We get to actually live in a mindset that says, God has given me something, and the more that I share it, the more it grows. When I talk about an abundance mindset, I'm not talking about name it and claim it, health and wealth. That's crap. I'm talking about God has given me something because God has placed in me part of his image and an ability to reflect him. And when I do that, he actually grows that. And if there's anybody in these personalities that needs to hear that, it's the analytical investigator, because their struggle, the lies that the enemy tells them is the same as what was being told to this guy. He's a hard man. Sows in hard places, reaps in hard places, hang on to it. Because if you lose it, you're going to be a madman. It's not going to be good. And you're going to run out. And yada, yada, yada. He's constantly in our ear. And what I want you to hear is the good news that the gospel says, no. We've been given to give. And when we do, that just grows. And in the end, the beauty is we're going to hear, well done, good and faithful servant, as that grows. So as the worship team comes up, I encourage those that might be going, that might be me, to consider this. To think about, where am I at? Am I in alignment with him? Am I using the way that God's gifted me to reflect him with wisdom and truth, to bring light to difficult situations, whether it's home, work, school, just whatever, conversation around coffee? Or have I gotten to a place where I am going off and hiding because I'm afraid I'm just going to become depleted and I'm not going to have enough and I'm going to be incapable and I just need to get more and more and more and more knowledge and education? If you're there, I want you to hear the truth of the gospel. If you know someone like this, help them by not being emotional and clingy around them. Help them by not surprising them with stuff that they weren't expecting to have put on them. Don't intrude their privacy. Help them with all that, but ultimately also help remind them of the gospel. And remind them of God's invitation to them, that he calls them to be free from the fear of scarcity and not having all they need to survive. Help remind them that they can trust God, that they're not going to run out, that he truly is a generous God that will supply all their needs because he loves them and He values them, and He put that image in them to start with. Remind them of this. And again, if they do need to go off and recharge, I think we all need to recharge at some time. But if they need a little more time to go recharge and hear this, pray for them while they're there. Don't take it personal. I can tell you, if they're mad at you and don't want to be around you, they're the analytical investigator. They'll tell you in a very smart way that they don't want to be around you. They'll just let you know. But if they just need to go off into that little shed by themselves, or the garage, or the room, or on a drive, or whatever it is, and they just need to say, no, I'm not going to that event, don't take it personal. Instead, pray for them. And say, God, while they're there, remind them that you have plenty of power to charge their battery. And you can keep them going, and then help them see what they bring to this world around us. And in that, give them peace amongst the turmoil. Help them in that. And if you need to hear that yourself today, hear that today. Start working on that and applying it. Would anybody know what that word amen means? So be it. So be it to those who are that analytical investigator, who are living in a world of craziness. As an old pig farmer just told me about 3 weeks ago from out of the red line, we've all lost our minds. It's got to drive the investigator nuts, because it's a lot about the mind. And can lead to such turmoil as they look around and go, so dumb, so dumb, so dumb. This is like, just, so be it that the Lord bless you, that peace be on you, that you get to experience it in this world that we live in as you stay in alignment with Him and realize He'll give you everything you need and more. And the rest of us, if ours has come up, let's work on it. Let's pull the pebble out of our shoe. Quit playing the game. Quit just going through and saying, God, how have you created me in your image? How can I reflect you? Because I know it comes across as frustration. Part of it is, but man, my passion is that we would get this. I don't want to have more stories. I know we can't stop it all, but we can do something. And that's what He wants. Begin by pulling out of your shoe, where are you? God, I pray that you would help us to take that first step, that little bit, as James Clear wrote in that advice, to not put off the workout, but to just say, you know what, I'm going to just start with this. I'm at least going to start here. I'm at least going to sit down and say, could this be me? And I'm going to sit with you, and I'm going to reflect on this, and I'm going to take a deeper look in this and just see where it goes. Help us at least take that step. And not just come to Sunday on another church and hear a sermon that we either found interesting or boring, whichever one we're on, and go home. But to hear what was said and at least go, where am I? What does the gospel say about that? What is the good news that it says about me? And then help us to keep our eyes and our ears, God, as we go back into the school time, as things pick with activities and games and all that, we're going to have so many opportunities to hear and to see where people are at. And we're going to have an opportunity to be light and salt in those situations and help them to see that there's a hope as well. So lead us into that, Lord, as we walk out of here. Thank you for another beautiful day that we get to walk through with you, to worship you and to serve you through. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.